All right. Hey, you're working harder than ever, but are you building a business that actually gives you freedom? If your business can't run without you physically there, you don't own it, it owns you. Welcome to the show, Bobby Casey. How are you?
I am fantastico. so
Fantastico. All right. I
estoy,
love it.
estoy fantastico.
Yeah,
Yeah, thanks for having me on today, John. Yeah, I'm doing great. Best day of my life. Every day is the best day. So
I love every day above ground is good, right? I thought we were about íbamos a hablar todo en español.
no. Solo en inglés, por favor.
Solo in English. All right, cool. All right,
Sí.
we'll go for show community. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button right now. Pick up the 4A Formula book. But back to you, Bobby Casey. We love to start with the journey. Like, off camera, you shared, hey, man, I've owned 10, 15 companies. It's been an interesting voyage that I've been on, expatting everywhere and living here and living there and owning homes in different places around the world. Where did that start? I mean, where'd you grow up? How did you come up? What was the education background? Did you go right into entrepreneurship? Is your family a background of that? So give us a little taste of that, and then we'll obviously go into businessanywhere.io.
Sure. Yeah, I'm originally from North Carolina. I was raised, you could say, in an entrepreneurial family. My grandpa, before I was born, he got out of it and sold it before I was born, but he still had the mindset, had a chain of restaurants. My dad had a construction company, basically from well, he was a partner at a construction company, and then when I was 3, he started his own construction company. So basically, all my childhood, my dad had a construction company, and growing up, we were always talking business. Like our normal dinner table talk was, starting business, running business, balance sheets, P&Ls, company structure, taxes, stuff like that. Like I started trading stocks when I was about 14 years old, because I already knew how to read like 10Ks and analyze companies, balance sheets, and stuff like that. So for me, it was like business was just kind of in my blood. I was never really raised with the, go to school, get good grades, get a good education, get into a good college, get that corporate job. Like I never had that upbringing. um, I wasn't exactly like my family didn't push me to say, hey, you need to start a company, you need to do your own thing, but they didn't push me for anything. I guess you'd say like I never like for anything really. Like I never remember my dad saying, you know what you really need to do? You should play soccer or baseball or whatever. It was just like whatever I wanted to do. All right, whatever, do it. Um, so yeah, I had a few jobs, like normal jobs as a kid, but I've never had a real job like as an adult. Like I've always had my own company. Like as an adult, I started my first business when I was 19, which failed miserably. I started another one when I was 20, which failed. I started a company when I was 21 that did pretty well. I actually ran that until I was 30, I want to say 33, somewhere around there. And I sold out of that company. During that period of time, I like in my 20s mainly, I also had bought a couple of my competitors, kind of rolled them into the business to make a bigger business. And then I also had bought and sold a restaurant in there, and I had like a real estate business for a while. And kind of in my later 20s, I was doing pretty well. I had a pretty decent sized company, had some assets and stuff like that. And I started thinking, I really need to kind of get my house in order, so to speak. Like I need to make sure I have the proper company structure in place, some tax optimization, some asset protection strategies in place. I just started thinking like I need to cover myself. And I went and hired a guy. I want to say this was like 2001 ish, two, something like that. And I hired a guy basically who is like me now. And he helped me kind of fix my own strategy with all that stuff, asset protection, planning, structure, blah, blah, blah. And through the process, it was really, really fascinating to me. It was like solving a puzzle. He would probe me with questions and dig a little deeper. And we were basically putting this puzzle together. And I was really fascinated by that process. So I went to him. We became friends. I went to him later and said, look, I got a bunch of friends that are all entrepreneurs. And actually, all of my friends were and still are entrepreneurs. I actually don't have friends that have jobs. Like, I don't, maybe it's weird, but like, I don't know. I like to do a lot of adventure sports things. I travel a lot. Um, and for me, like, I had friends that I could call up on like a Thursday morning and say, hey, let's go ride motorcycles in 2 hours. And they're like, all right, let's go. And like, people that have like corporate jobs, that's not really an option for them. So I just always had friends that had businesses. So I had friends with their own companies, and I went to the guy that I worked with and said, look, I got a bunch of friends in my boat. What if I bring them in as clients and, we split the profit and do the consulting with them and all that? And he goes, yeah, sure, whatever. So we worked over the next couple of years. We worked with a few of them. I had a couple of big defining moments around 2006-07, where I realized I didn't like what I was doing. I didn't like my primary business. I don't know, just wasn't happy in general with the way things were going. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to sell my company. I sold all my real estate. I sold my company. I had sold the restaurant a little bit before that. And, I had, basically I had a motorcycle crash where I almost died. And I was in a coma for like a week, almost a week. And a couple of months after that, I said, I really need to like think about life, because life is really short. You probably hear this story a ton. People have like a real big defining moment, a big injury, a car crash, motorcycle crash, health scare. And then people are like, oh, I need to think about, what life's really about. And that's basically what I did. And I went away. Actually, I had an RV at the time. I went away to the beach, Outer Banks, if you're familiar with the Outer Banks in North Carolina. I went for a week, sat in my RV on the beach, didn't leave the campground for a week, and just reflected on the past, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to accomplish, did tons of journaling. And I came to the conclusion to sell my company, to get out of all of my real estate. I didn't like doing it anymore. I didn't like the company. I didn't like the company. I didn't like my customers. I didn't like my employees. I didn't like the business. I just hated all of it. And I'm like, I had this moment. I said, like, fast forward 10 years. Okay. 10 years forward. If you don't change anything, are you going to be more or less happy in 10 years if you don't make a change? And I was like, well, I'm not happy now. And it's like, I don't see a path to improve doing what I'm doing. So let's change. Let's do something different. So, because life's short, we should be happy, right? Like, I shouldn't be like struggling all the time. So did all that. And then in that process, I decided what I wanted to do business-wise is I really enjoyed working with entrepreneurs. These are my people. These are my friends. These are who I like spending time with. This is my circle, my sphere of influence. It's all entrepreneurs. And I said, I'm just going to keep doing the consulting thing for more clients. And I formalized that into what's called a real business. I was already doing it like kind of as a side gig for several years, but I formalized it around 2000, I think 9, if I'm not mistaken, 8 or 9, something like that, almost 20 years ago. And I started doing consulting where I was helping clients like with asset protection strategies, tax optimization, company structure, that sort of thing, to help them get their house in order. And that evolved a little bit over time. Around that period, or a little bit before that, I started traveling a lot. I mean, I'd always traveled, but I traveled more like going on vacation a few times a year for a week or two here and there. And I did quite a bit of like vacation travel. And I use air quotes because if you're an entrepreneur and you do vacation travel, what that means is you actually just do work from your cell phone at the beach. Like, that's actually what it mostly means, right? And you get a little bit of extra time off. So I'd done that for a while, but about 20 years ago, I also started traveling a lot more, going to different countries, spending extended periods of time in different countries and that sort of thing. And And like fast forward a little bit, like to today, I've lived in, I guess, 10 different countries. I've been to 80 or so different countries. I've legally immigrated to, I think, 7 different countries now, like where I actually went through the process to become like a legal resident. And in that process, just being kind of a world traveler and being in those environments, ran into entrepreneurs from different countries. And so my sphere became more location independent entrepreneurs. It could be people who, you live in Des Moines, Iowa, and you have a software company and you do everything working from home. So you are location independent, but you choose to live in Des Moines. Or you could be from Des Moines with a software company and you go live in Colombia for 3 months, and then you go live in Thailand for 6 months, and then you go live in Germany for 3 months. It can be that. I have a lot of clients in that situation. Actually, that's the biggest majority of my clients that are more nomadic and running their businesses globally. So I just had that experience of dealing with that, and I was doing it. I mean, this is what I was doing too. And my business just kind of evolved around that because I really like those people. It's interesting. I mean, the puzzle solving of that is crazy. Like, I mean, just hypothetically, take an example. You've got a Canadian who has, I don't know, let's say a coaching business, and they're making $1 million a year. They live let's say they live 3 months out of the year in Canada. They live 6 months a year in Mexico and 3 months out of the year in Colombia, for example. Well, what do? Like, it's very complicated. Like, do they just register their company in Canada and pay tax in Canada as if they live there all the time? Do they exit the Canadian tax system and become a tax resident somewhere else? Where do they register their company? Where do they do their banking, payment processing? How do they organize the business structure? All of these things. And when you have, in that example, you've got 3 different countries at play there. Canada, what did I say? Mexico and Colombia, I think. So you got 3 different countries as you planted like 3 different flags, so to speak. So it gets complicated. And I love that puzzle solving, and I'm exceptionally good at it. I have clients in over 100 countries. The vast majority of them are location independent entrepreneurs who live outside of their home country. And so it's just fun. It's fun to solve those solutions, or find those solutions, solve those problems. But over the time, that company, it's called Global Wealth Protection, globalwealthprotection.com. That company, I started referring people to different partners to do different things. Like, you need to set up a trust here. You need to set up an offshore company. Go over here. You need to register Wyoming LLC. Go over here. And you need a virtual mailbox. Go over here. And over time, I basically started all those companies because I got tired of referring my clients to other partners, and I thought, well, this is dumb. I could just I could do exactly the same thing with different companies and build teams to run these different things. So that's what I did. And that's eventually how Business Anywhere came to be. Business Anywhere actually was originally a software development. I hired a developer to be honest, to solve an issue because I was lazy. It was a result of extreme laziness. And I hired this developer to build out a platform to automatically renew our clients' LLCs in the U.S. to file their annual reports, pay their fees, do all their state compliance, because we were doing it manually. Like, we registered, God knows, thousands of companies for clients, and it got really tedious. So I hired a developer to build this out. And then when we built it out to automate their renewals and filing annual reports and stuff, I thought, actually, I should probably just spin this off as a separate company. And then we started adding other things to it. Like, we refer a lot of people over to some virtual mailbox partners. We should have a virtual mailbox. So then we created that as part of the company. And we're like, everybody needs a notary on occasion. So let's do remote online notary. We added that in there and all these other things. So that's kind of how Business Anywhere came to be. I still do the consulting. but I don't really actively look for consulting clients. Of course, if they come to me, I'll take new clients. They mostly come from referrals, or I don't know, maybe they heard me talk like this, like on a podcast or something, but we do zero marketing for that. Most of our focus is on the businessanywhere.io business. So I know that wasn't the shortest intro, but I hope that's okay.
No, yeah, no. I mean, obviously, we've got to get a perspective of kind of where you came from and what's going on, and that initial couple side steps, right, and learning lessons of failed businesses is always good. My first business that I had when I was 19, partnered up in the long distance service business and retail Nextel phones. There was the walkie talkie phones back in the
Yep,
day.
yep.
um, I didn't realize that you had to pay employee taxes. I didn't realize that there was
Mm-hmm.
sales tax. And my partner, who's still a friend of mine, but it was a hard time back in those days. He was ops and I was sales, and we built 3 retail stores. But it's interesting that you came with these learning lessons of those first few failed ones to then take a 10-year journey, which is similar to me. I sold my business in '09 and became a commercial banker. So it's funny. I always say, like, I joke around, I went from entrepreneur to banker. But it's also redefined the things that I love, which is I love strategy. I love being able to get in there, work with business owners, understand from a capital sense, from a strategy sense, what to do with them and help them. But I get paid well to do it. So I see a lot of solopreneurs not make anywhere near what I make. So it's a give and take, right? It's an interesting dynamic, and it's such an interesting situation to be able to build the form of the business that you have because of the experience that you endured, and then now connected with all these dots of people that are of the same tribe that you are around the world, and you've attracted them to. So really, really cool stuff. I think a lot of our Go for Show community can really kind of relate to that and understand how does someone build something like that. And you've solved key issues, right? If I want to be a small to medium-sized business that, as an owner, that can, is not HVAC working on something locally, and even if you have that, sometimes you can move, right? How do you set that up? I've always thought, like, hey, if I'm traveling so much, how does each government know what I owe them, right? So you solve a lot of great issues that I think people that want to explore the world and want to not be in Dubuque, Iowa their whole life,
Mm-hmm.
would can do that. And so you bring a lot of value in that sense. So, all right. So from the global business side of things and these services that you started to stack on, what were some of the dynamics? Because ultimately, you seem like a pretty free-spirited guy. I'm assuming, and tell me if I'm wrong here, you found the talent or found the systems that then allowed you still some freedom where you weren't doing all the work of all those things, being the notary, being the LLC, you know, um, formation company, that type of thing. I'm assuming were those, like you said, partnerships that evolved into internal systems and processes that you did?
Yeah. So I want to answer that in just a second, but I want to comment on something you said before about, like, starting a business, failing, learning lessons, starting another one, failing, learning lessons for the entrepreneur listeners here. Or for those thinking about starting an entrepreneurial journey, let me give you a quick lesson. Entrepreneurship is nothing more than failing and failing again and failing again, and hoping each time you learn a little bit so you fail a little bit less the next time. Entrepreneurship, like, everybody sees, like, I don't know, the story in the news where the 21-year-old kid sold his company to Google for $3 billion or something like that. That's like, you don't know the backstory of that kid, first of all. You don't know anything. And that is, like, literally like one out of a billion story. That's why it's a news headline, right?
Yeah.
Because it attracts the readers in media. But that is not the entrepreneurial journey for 99.9% of all entrepreneurs. 99.9% of all entrepreneurs fail, hopefully learn something, do it a little bit better, fail a little bit more, do it a little bit better, fail, do it a little better, like that. I mean, even like when you start your business and you're like trying to like validate your product or service idea, I can guarantee you almost every entrepreneur, and I use the word almost, I don't even really believe that, but I leave it out there as maybe possibly somebody got it right from the beginning. But almost every entrepreneur, when they started their business with whatever that product or service was they had at day one, by year, let's say 3-ish, that product or service is probably almost indistinguishable from what you started with, because if you listen to your customers, they buy, maybe you get a few customers and they're like, hey, this is cool, but I would like it if it did this, this, or this. I'd like it if it was a different color, different size, different shape. It did this feature, function, whatever. And over time, you listen to your customers and you tweak and tweak and tweak. And, it's a learning curve. And by the time you're a couple of years in, that product doesn't really look like the one you started with. So every step is a failure along the way. So if you're a business owner or want to be business owner, I just hope you understand that it's very unlikely you're going to start out and hit that home run in the first month. Like that sounds beautiful. That sounds wonderful. Like that sounds like, Snow White getting the kiss, like it's just not going to happen. So to answer your question, like, how did I come to the concept of building this thing with the global perspective and like with freedom minded and that type of thing? That's generally your question, right?
Yeah.
So my company operates fully remote. Like we don't have an office. We do have location partners, like physical locations that we partner with. Like for example, we have a virtual mailbox company, right? Or part of Business Anywhere is a virtual mailbox service. Sorry. We have lots of locations around the U.S. We don't own those physical places. We have partnership agreements with various partners in different locations. And then I have my team members that actually work from home, and they go and, deal with those location partners when it comes to receiving the mail, scanning, uploading the mail, customer service for our virtual mailbox partners, forwarding mail, all these things. But my team members, all my team members work from home. Like we don't have nobody shows up into an office. Nobody punches a clock. None of that. I mean, we have team members like scattered all over the U.S. and we don't because we don't have an office. I'm also not. Now, let me back up for a second. I have team members all over the U.S. I have team members in Mexico, Latvia, Ukraine, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. Honestly, I think a couple of other, the Netherlands. Like we got people all over the place. Like that. But for me, like I don't necessarily. Well, let me say this: for the virtual mailbox people, the people that actually like what I call our mailbox managers, they do need to be in the U.S., but they don't need to go to an office, for example. So I don't really care necessarily like exactly where they live. Like I don't need to have an employee that lives in downtown New York City, for example. Like if I find the best person for the job is in downtown New York City, great, that's fine. I'll hire them, but they don't need to be. I go where talent is, and for me, freedom is a big part of my core value. I want to have the freedom to live my life the way I want to live it. I want to be able to, on Monday, if I want to jump on a plane and fly to Buenos Aires and spend a week down there, I don't want any limitation to that. Like, I mean, obviously, aside from having the money to buy the plane ticket and rent the apartment and that sort of thing, but I don't want to have any geographical limitation to keep me there. And for the most part, I don't want my team to have that limitation either. I want them, if, for example, we've got, some moms that work for us. And if these moms want to take their kid to school in the morning and they end up staying an hour at the school helping out with the teacher and they don't start work until 10:30 in the morning, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. as long as they get their tasks done in that day. I don't care if they start at 6 in the morning, 10 in the morning. I don't care if they take all of Monday off and then they end up having to work Saturday afternoon. If that's their choice, fine by me. I don't really care. So I want them to have the freedom to do that because I want the freedom to do things like that. Like my kids were visiting me in Mexico last week. So I wanted to have the freedom to take time off to go do fun things with my kids. And I want my team to have that ability also. So I built the company around that freedom. And by doing that, it also allowed me to not be geo-based, geographically based, where I had to find all my talent in one location. So that means if the best developer I can hire is in Serbia, great. I'll hire a developer in Serbia. I don't care. If the best personal assistant I can find is in Estonia, no problem. I'll hire an Estonian personal assistant. I mean, I had an assistant in Estonia once. I had one assistant a few years ago. She was great. She ended up getting married, and her husband ran a hotel, so she quit because they kind of lived in the middle of nowhere in this country hotel. But she worked for me in London for a while, and then she moved to Zimbabwe. I don't care. I could care less. Move to Zimbabwe. The only thing that meant for me is she had to take like 4 days off to move to Zimbabwe. And I was like, okay, take the time off. Just get caught up when you get back. No big deal. So for me, it's really important to not be geographically bound personally, but it's also important to not have the company geographically bound. If the best talent I can find is in Columbia, South Carolina, awesome. I'll take the person. Great. Like we just hired somebody like 3 weeks ago in Orlando, Florida. And it wasn't that we were looking for somebody in Orlando. We wanted somebody in Florida because of the virtual mailbox stuff. And it just so happened the best person we found lived in Orlando. Great. I don't care. They could have been in Jacksonville or Delray Beach or Fort Lauderdale. Didn't matter to me. So we don't have that geographical restriction. And I think that's useful for a lot of startup people nowadays because, I mean, obviously we don't pay rent anywhere, so that saves money. We save a ton of money on those office expenses and those sorts of things. But also, I think it also improves the quality of life of your employees and you and your team because, like I said, you got that mom that wants to stay 2 hours at school to help out the kids in the morning. They appreciate having that flexibility in their work, and it makes them more interested and more loyal to you as your employer because you give them that flexibility. Whereas if they were commuting an hour each way to work, they're probably constantly thinking, man, I really should find a job closer to home. This is taking time away out of my daily life. And, I think especially for startup founders, it makes a lot of sense to be able, I mean, if you can do that, obviously, if you start up a chain of restaurants, like you can't do that. Or in your case, a chain of cell phone stores, it's kind of hard to do that remotely. But nowadays you could start up an online cell phone store, I guess, be completely different. So I think that to me, that was just about quality of life for me. And I didn't want to be a hypocrite, so I wanted my team to have a good quality of life as well.
You described, there's certain businesses that can't do what you're doing, but you've also described a way that if you found the product or service that has this type of capability, you happen to be an expert at putting that together, an expert at having the tools that will help someone create this type of lifestyle business and freedom. So it's really interesting. So Go For Show community, I mean, if you're new to the channel or you just are watching this and hearing Bobby talk about this, like almost seems like fantasy land, right? 50 years ago, there's no way this happens. 70 years ago, 100 years ago. But now we're in an age of such extreme, strong presence of technology and tools that, you could talk to someone and you don't know that Bobby's in Mexico right now. He could be in Australia, right? As long as the connection's good and we can chat and give each other some reference points of next steps to do those types of things, and obviously still create the SOPs that a general business has, and some standard ways of doing things. Boy, what a revolutionary way to think. Again, in the right industries and the right services and the right products that you could be able to do something like that with. So really, really cool stuff. I appreciate you kind of, diving
Yeah.
into the mindset of how you put that together. So,
Can I make a couple of comments real quick?
yeah,
Before I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm afraid
no,
I'm afraid I might forget them.
no worries.
So first of all, yes, it works in my business model, but there's a lot of people in my industry that don't operate like this. They choose to have like an office. I have a lot of competitors. They got a big office with people working in the cubicles and sitting around the water cooler and the coffee machine. Like normal office stuff. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be like that for a lot of people, and I value that deeply to have that freedom. I would not have gone into, so going back to my motorcycle crash and my big defining moment, one of those things was moving forward in my life. I'm not going to do anything where that freedom is not available. So I didn't, when you're goal setting, right? Like I assume you probably do some form of goal setting. And so, when you're like just arbitrarily, you're here, you put a goal over here. Psychologically, your brain sees that goal as the journey you're going to go on, right? And so you make decisions, your subconscious makes decisions to make you, you always zigzag a little bit, right? But eventually you're moving in that direction. You don't go over here, you don't go over here, you don't go back, because psychologically your brain has this thing and you move toward that way. Well, for me, back when I had that big incident about 20 years ago, big crash and defining life-changing moment, I set some very clear goals for myself. One of them was the ability to work remotely from anywhere in the world and to build companies where my team can do the same, so they have that same freedom and that same luxury. I won't touch a business that doesn't have that anymore. Now, that may not be your goal or your listeners' goals or whatever. Whatever your goal is, though, you need to define that and move in that direction towards your goals, right? So if your goal is, I love Columbia, South Carolina, I don't ever want to move. I want an office 5 minutes from my house. I want to be friends with all of my employees and they all need to live nearby so we can all go play golf on Saturday. Like, that's your goal. So you need to build your business in that way so that you have that office 5 minutes from your house, all your employees within a 10-minute radius, that kind of thing. If that's your goal, all of your decisions will take you on that path to get there. And my business, the way it functions now, like being able to work remotely, like you said, 50 years ago, this is not really doable. Well, there was a big moment, and I'm sure you remember this, but if I'm not mistaken, 2004 was the year Skype started. So you had a couple of Estonian guys that came up with this really unique, cool video platform where people could talk, do phone calls and video calls peer-to-peer between two computers on the internet, and you could have video calls. Well, prior to Skype existing, if you traveled for work, what did you do? You carried your cell phone. Well, if you remember back in those days, if you went out of the country, that phone call was $5 or $10 or $15 a minute for every call you make. I remember once I went to Russia for like 2 weeks. I came home and my phone bill was, I don't know, like $2,000 or $3,000. Well, that is not a good solution if you're a small business owner or a solopreneur or a freelancer or something like that. You can't have regular $3,000 a month phone bills. Yeah. Skype eliminated all of that. Skype eliminated that and created a tool that people could use to communicate with all their clients everywhere in the world, as long as you both had Skype on your computer. And it was a game changer for the business world. And then maybe you've read the book, but also a little bit after that, but around that same mid 2000s time frame, is Tim Ferriss wrote a book called The 4 Hour Work Week.
Mm.
And he talked a lot about being able to work remotely and have virtual assistants and using Skype and remote accessing your computer and building systems around your business so that you can have, improve your quality of life. And that became kind of what I call the digital nomad Bible from like the mid 2000s forward. And there was a lot of tools, but now, like, fast forward 20-ish years, I mean, we're on Zoom right now, but there's dozens of these like video platforms. Our team uses Slack for asynchronous communication. We do most of our trainings are done on Loom videos. So we do a new training video, we put it on Loom, we send it out to our team, they sit down and watch it. My God, now we have AI tools. We have our own internal AI platform that's trained on our own processes and company data. So even now, my team has the ability to go onto our own AI tool and ask questions like, how do I X? How do I do X? And like, we have technology tools today that I would say, I mean, this isn't like an anecdotal thing, but I would say more than half of your businesses now have the ability to run virtually. And I would say more like 80+% of them have the ability to run at least partially virtually. I mean, like, I don't know if you saw it in the news, but a few weeks ago, Target, like the big retail chain, one of the biggest retail chains in the country, they closed their headquarters down in Minnesota. They basically, almost all of their corporate employees now work from home. Like, if you've ever been to Minneapolis, like this huge high-rise in the middle of downtown, like this massive high-rise building that employs God knows how many thousands of people. They're like, yeah, we don't need this anymore. And they closed it down. It's sitting completely empty right now. So like, it's not just small businesses doing it. I mean, during COVID, General Motors sent their entire workforce home. Like, their entire workforce in all of the country. I mean, other than, the people working in the factories, but their office workforce. They sent their entire office workforce home to work remotely. And now, now you got these companies trying to call them back, and now you've got employees going, no thanks. I don't really want to hang out at the office anymore. You're getting a lot of pushback now, and there's two sides to that. Then there's some people like, nah, I hate working from home. Let me go back to the office. But I'm just saying it's doable, whereas before it wasn't, and it's doable for way more types of businesses than you think possible.
No, and that resonates, Bobby. I think, when you really take a step back, you're 100% correct, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of kind of where is your leadership style? What type of business do you want to create? Do you feel confident enough that you could create the culture? I think a lot of the Jamie Dimons of the world of Chase, we're pretty hardcore to say, hey, 22, 23, 24, like, get your butts back to in the office. I need you in the office, collaborating. I need you meeting with our clients. I don't want this, over Zoom type thing. So those types of people, that's their style, right? You, Bobby Casey, have built an enterprise that allows freedom, so you're attracting certain talent, right? And like you said, some people aren't good at home. they're not disciplined. They get distracted very easily. The boob tube is there, so it's an interesting dynamic. And gosh, we could probably talk for a few hours on, how to have checkpoints. What are some systems that you have in place? Do you have some ways that, hey, like, as an example, I have a couple of interns that do some stuff for me on the podcast that are high schoolers that they're learning media and social media and stuff like that, and and 100%, like, they go to they both are actually, funny enough, work at a grocery store physically here in Naperville, but they're like, this is so cool, Mr. Andrade. Like, like, I get to do things on TikTok and this and upload and this and do stuff for you. And like, you pay me for the 4 hours that I worked this week or 5 hours. Right. And we have one or two, checkpoints. I do ask them to at least, input into a tool of, when they start work and stuff like that, so I can track a little bit of it. But, for the most part, it's like it's their freedom, right? And they can go do whatever they want as long as they get the tasks that we talked about done. What do I care? I pay them their money and we're good to go. So it gives
Mm.
me a little bit of a sense, a little bit of a taste of what you're talking about. And I guess it just still comes down to values, right? The last interview I had, she talked about selling her business and getting into the hypnosis mindful wellness space.
Mm-hmm.
She's selling bigger corporations, 50 to 1,000 employees, that she will be a health and wellness power hour of meditation for her, for executives and line leaders and stuff like that. So, she took it from working 90, 100 hours a week in her business to now a separate type of business. So it really comes down to always the values that you have. So I love it. I think it's very intriguing. And I guess the question I would ask from a business standpoint, what with typical types of clients come to you in this world of work from home, abroad, these types of stages in their life, and what do you actually do from the notary to this, to the corporation setup? What are the services that business affords them to be able to do?
Okay, so from my consulting business, the globalwealthprotection.com business, I exclusively work with location independent entrepreneurs that live outside of their home country or have business outside of their home country or high net worth investors with a global perspective in their strategy. Okay. Those types of things we do consulting. We analyze their current situation, what their company structure looks like, their taxation, and I work exclusively with people with those multi-jurisdictional issues because big companies have resources. They can go to like Deloitte or Anderson's or something like that to find it. But if you run a company that's doing $1 million or $3 million or $10 million or $20 million a year, you can't really go to Deloitte. Like you're completely off the radar. Like I mean, I guess technically you could, but you couldn't afford them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that wouldn't be a viable solution for you. So I work with those kind of, I call them small to mid-sized businesses. I mean, they're not micro businesses, but most of my clients are $1 million to, let's say, 20 million in revenue. And we help them get properly structured so they are optimized. Like very often using the case study before, like the Canadian with the coaching business who's 3 months in Canada, 3 months in Thailand, 6 months in Mexico or something like that. Like a situation like that, we would help them exit the Canadian tax system in the right way. There's a lot of steps you got to do to exit the tax system. Canada is a very high tax country. You don't want if you're a Canadian living outside of Canada, you do not want your company registered in Canada unless it has a nexus in Canada, like a physical connection to Canada. Like if you had a chain of restaurants, of course, it needs to be in Canada. But if it's a virtual type business, then you definitely don't want it to be in Canada. So we would look at a better place to structure the business in a tax optimized way that aligns with like how you get paid and banking and stuff like that. And then we look at your personal situation when it comes to optimization for you personally on tax residency and physical residency and that sort of thing. So that's through Global Wealth Protection. And like we also do asset protection strategies. One of my that I didn't mention, third company, is I own a trust company in the Caribbean. So we do a lot of like estate planning work, trust administration, asset protection planning, that type of thing. So we do that with like high net worth clients and people doing estate planning and stuff. With Business Anywhere, I mean, we can register an LLC or a corporation for anybody. Like if you find our website and you're a plumber from New Jersey with 5 trucks, we can register your LLC in New Jersey. That's fine. That's not really like the audience we talk to in our marketing and like for us, for marketing, it's mostly content marketing. We do like a lot of blog posts and videos and like a lot of videos, a lot of content marketing. So generally we're talking to the virtual entrepreneur who has a more global perspective. But of course, And we do have another demographic for Business Anywhere, and that's like real estate investors in the U.S. Because if you've ever done real estate investing, when you go to finance an investment property, pretty much every lender that's going to lend money on a commercial property is going to want that thing to be in an LLC. So we do a lot of LLCs for real estate investors. But our target market is real estate investors and these kind of location independent entrepreneurs with virtual companies, because our toolbox is built in a way that people can do everything within their dashboard. Like our goal, like I'm very big on entrepreneurship. I really think it's basically it's the driver of human growth, which sounds like very esoteric and whatever, but that's my view. And so I want to make things as easy as possible for entrepreneurs to focus on the things that matter to them. And every entrepreneur on earth, all they care about is the next thing. It's the next sale, the next deal, the next hire, the next project, the next trade show, whatever. The administrative stuff like your company structure and your compliance and bookkeeping and all that stuff, those are things you don't want to deal with. So our platform is built around the idea of making the things you don't want to do super easy so you can focus on the important things, the growth of your business. And we also want to help you with the proper structure so that you pay the lowest amount of tax you possibly can, because as an entrepreneur, we feel like you are a much better allocator of capital than any government ever could be. So the more money you have, the better you're going to be, more people you're going to hire, more R&D on your products, better improvement in services, and all this stuff. These are like bigger ideas, I guess. But our client base is basically anybody who needs registering a company and wants to automate all their compliance on the back end.
I love it. No, it's very good product market fit, right? For those types of people that have that need and want to be able to explore that from a systematized way. And you've solved their issue, right? They joined your firm. They're able to, I mean, the wealth side of things too. Is there a certain target on the affluent side? Do they have to have 10 million in assets or 30 million to go do the offshore trusts and all those types of things?
That's always I get that question all the time, and like the funny thing is, it really depends on the person and their preferences. Like I've had clients come to me with less than $1 million in net worth. And they really wanted to set up an offshore trust and protect their wealth. Because, once you put it into an irrevocable foreign trust, it makes it very difficult to attack, like in lawsuits and that sort of thing. And also there's a big estate planning benefit to minimizing or eliminating your estate taxes when you die. So I've had clients come to me with under $1 million net worth saying, I really want to get this done. I've also had clients come to me with $50 million net worth saying, yeah, I'm not really ready for that yet. I don't have enough money to make it viable. And in my mind, I'm thinking $50 million is definitely enough to make this viable. But I would say asset protection, like most of my clients, when it comes to asset protection planning, this is stupid, but it's the reality, is they don't come to me until they already have a problem and they want to see if they can fix it post-event, or at least make sure they don't run in, like they solve this problem going forward. That's how, because most people, when it comes to asset protection planning, they're like, yeah, that sounds really cool. I'll deal with that later. I don't need to deal with this now. It's fine. Next year I'll get this done. So people don't, they're like, oh, I'm never going to get sued. I'm never going to have this big lawsuit or whatever. But what you don't realize is like I've had people tell me like, oh, I don't have any risk in my business and in my life. Like nobody's ever going to sue me for anything. Like I had a client, this has been a few years ago, but I had 3 clients came to me. They were partners in a big real estate project in Ohio. They had like this big apartment complex, like 300-door apartment complex. And they had bought this thing. They put their own money down. They got a big bank loan from Wells Fargo to go buy this thing. It passed all the inspections. Everything was perfect. Cash flow was perfect. Everything was good. And then all three of them came to me to develop an asset protection strategy because, they had a lot tied up in this thing. And there's a huge risk with having an apartment complex with 300 doors. And they had other things going on, other investments and businesses and stuff like that. So they all three came to me together and said, let's try to do this. One of them, in the end, I jokingly call this like my what do you call it? The Three Little Pigs story. You had like the brick pig, the wood pig, and the straw pig, right? So because literally this is how it turned out to be. So one of the clients, we did like an initial consultation, and they said, yes, let's do everything, right? So we put it was a woman. Yeah, that was a woman. We put everything in, like we split this woman's assets up into several LLCs, and we created a foreign trust. The trust owned all the foreign assets, and it was not an overly complex structure, but relatively complex. And then we'll call her Brick Pig, and then Wood Pig. He said, "Well, I want to separate assets, but I don't want to spend the money on the trust. So, and I don't want to put everything like in these other structures. So he was like middle of the road, did like a little bit. Third one, who I call Straw Pig, he said, this is too expensive. I don't want to spend all this money. I don't have any risk anyway, so nothing's going to happen. Well, you can kind of guess where this story is going. Maybe not the details, but basically what happened is a few years later, they found like some of the tenants in that apartment building were getting sick. They found out the building had black mold in it behind the walls. The inspectors didn't catch it. And so the building ended up getting condemned. Like, it was a huge complex. The whole complex got condemned, the whole thing. So they went from, and I don't remember how many millions of dollars this thing was worth, but they had like a multi-million-dollar mortgage with Wells Fargo. The whole thing, went empty, like overnight, like it got condemned. And so the cash flow obviously went away, right? Well, the cash flow went away. What happens? Wells Fargo wants to foreclose on the property. So they foreclosed, but there was a big, what do you call it? You're a banker, this, let's say the loan. Yeah, there was personal guarantees, but there was a big difference between, the current asset value. I mean, it was like a difference of a couple of $1 million between asset value and what they owed on the mortgage at this point, because the asset value dropped tremendously when it got condemned, obviously. And so they have personal guarantees. So Wells Fargo sued each one of them personally. And now you can kind of guess what happened. Brick Pig completely protected. And he was able to negotiate a much better settlement and a payment plan to work it out and all this stuff. Straw Pig basically was kind of sort of protected, but he ended up losing some assets because basically they just kind of went after a bunch of assets and kind of wiped those out, the things he didn't want to put away. And then he ended up with some charging orders on a couple of LLCs, which better than nothing, but not perfect. And you can guess, Straw Pig, she was zeroed out.
Wiped out.
Yeah, she was an older woman. It was pretty bad too. She was an older woman. She was like mid 60s. And she had like pretty decent amount of assets and was living mostly on like investments. But she worked like part-time at a flower shop. I don't know, 15, 20 bucks an hour or something like that, working at a flower shop. And she lost everything, everything of everything. And then all she has is a job making 15, 20 bucks an hour, working 20 hours a week at a flower shop, and then getting Social Security. So she went from a very good lifestyle to ramen noodles and beanie weenies. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. No, and look, I mean, unfortunately, that is in all walks of life, right? The Aretha Franklins and Princes of the world who didn't even have a will. From that standpoint, these people are super famous people with advisors everywhere, are still messing up that part of their life. To the reality of, like you said, this investment real estate property. I've done quite a few loans in that space. I can only imagine. It made me think. I'm like, hey, have my clients talked about black mold, like in those types of things? It's
Yeah.
certainly a big deal, right? And then you have the Grant Cardones of the world that own billions of dollars in real estate and those types of like. You wonder if a guy like that, with the team that he has and as popular as he is, and people that want to sue him just for the fun of it, um, how they protect themselves. And he's pretty vocal about he'll fight things. He'll sue back or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
it's an interesting dynamic. But look, these are great problems to have, meaning that's why you've provided the right solutions, right? And that's why you get to have this business and be able to use this type of business from anywhere that you want, hire the right type of people and those type of things. So I love it. I love it. What a great discussion today. And as we end the podcast, we typically go through CEO. This might be a little bit different for you because this was a really intriguing conversation. But C for client experience. So if you could put a bow on it, people that come to you at any one of the businesses that you have, what do you think is that true value proposition of how they're going to experience doing business with you?
Um, well, I can tell you with Business Anywhere, we have extremely high reviews, like on Google Review and Trustpilot, and we get we really focus on hardcore trying to make sure our clients get a good experience. Like pretty much, like if you look on our Trustpilot, pretty much all of our reviews even mention the person in the company they worked with, because we want to make sure all of our team members are actively engaged with the client, trying to make sure they have a good experience. So I think they have a great experience working for us or working with us. I think, I mean, we've had so many people say like, wow, I've registered LLCs before with other platforms, and this one is amazing. The dashboard is amazing. All my mail is in one place. I can see everything about all my renewals and my compliance filings. I can see where everything was done automatically. So I think a lot of people really love it. I think from the consulting side, I've never had a client like, I mean, I've been doing the consulting like full time, as a proper business since 2009. I've never had a client come back to me and say, you gave me bad advice. I've never had a client come back to me and say, hey, I did this and it didn't work, and I ended up having to pay double tax or, something like that. I've had tons of clients come to me and say, hey, you put this, let's say, asset protection structure in place, and I don't know. I was like, I recently had one where we did a trust for him 10, 11 years ago, and he was recently sued, and they tried to sue him personally. And the judge dismissed the case because the judge literally said, like, the trustee is in a different country. If you want to deal with this, you got to go to that other country and sue the trustee. So they dismissed the case, and it just poof, it just evaporated. And he was like, dude, that's the best thing ever. You literally saved my ass. And I have another client. We're good friends now, but I have another client. We've, like, I mean, he like sends me pictures of his kids like waving at me in videos of the kid like, hey, Bobby, stuff like that, because like we have done so much to protect his assets over the years. This is a client who's probably, since I've known him in the past 10 years, has probably started 30 companies. So he's a big risk taker, and he's always doing a lot of things. He's not afraid to make moves. So I think all my clients have an amazing experience.
No, I love it. And, that's part of it, right? You've built this, transference of a mindset that also relates to the way you do business that then permeates to your team. And now you all have that cultural, similarity, right? That you bring to the experience of the client. So the second is E for engagement. So it's basically like, how does Bobby, Casey, like to engage? If you talk about your clients, if they were to say, hey, Bobby, let's go to a baseball game. Let's go, like you said, motorcycling the other, a little bit earlier. So that, like, what are the things that you like to do to engage with your family, with your people, with your vendors, with your clients? What are some of the ways that you personally engage?
You mean in a business setting or a personal setting?
Both. Yeah. I mean,
Well,
some people tell me, hey, you know what, John? I just love going out to dinner. Or I like rock climbing. I go rucking with three of my clients and my family. Like, what is it that really moves you when people would say and learn about you? Like, oh man, if I could do this with Bobby, he would be in his element, engaging.
man, I'm friends with a lot of my clients, and I travel a lot. So very often when I'm traveling, I'll look up people that I know in that city, and we'll organize something. We'll organize like a dinner for a few of us, or an event, or an activity, or something like that. Um, what's some example? Like a couple of weeks ago, I was in Arizona, like Phoenix, Scottsdale area of Arizona. I'm not going to name the name, but my daughter's a singer, and the opening of her U.S. tour started in Arizona. So I wanted to go to her opening show in the U.S. And I went, and I had a bunch of clients and a couple of friends there. Actually, they're all friends, but they're all clients also. Actually, I forgot forgot they're actually clients. I think of them more as friends, and then oh yeah, they're also clients like that. So I went there and invited a bunch of my friends to come with me to the show. So we went to the show, hung out, and of course, backstage and all that stuff because she's my kid. But like while I was there for like 5 days. A bunch of us went out and we went go karting. We did like this, VR zombie thing. Another day, a bunch of us went and rented these side by side off road vehicles and drove around in the desert for a few hours. Me personally, I like anything fast. Like I raced motorcycles for 20 years. So riding motorcycles, racing go-karts, ATVs, off-road quads, dirt bikes, going to the race, like pavement also, the racetrack on cars, anything fast. I'm down for any of that stuff. Going to dinner, I spend a lot of time, like here in Mexico, I got a bunch of friends and clients here. At least a couple of times a week, I'm hanging out with clients and friends here, like just going to dinner or doing activities and stuff like that. I travel with them sometimes. Like I've done trips with some friends and clients, like just for the heck of it. Yeah, stuff like
Nice.
that.
No, well, I appreciate that. And, every answer has been different for the 400 plus interviews I've had. And I used to talk about it as employee engagement, but it transformed into engagement because it's so interesting how every human being is a little bit different. They'd like to interact in different ways and be engaged in certain ways, styles. So appreciate you sharing that. Last one is operational excellence. Obviously building a business and a platform and the things that you've been able to do, you have to have the right tools or else you're not going to be able to accomplish what you've been able to do. So what are two or three of the best tools that you use in your business daily nowadays?
I mean, I would imagine you're going to get a lot of the same answers on this one. They're all going to be a lot of them are going to be AI tools, like Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini, and we use all that stuff. I mean, we're using AI tools on a regular basis. We use HeyGen for video stuff. Um, like for example, we do a lot of videos like YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and all that stuff. And I do a lot of them live where I'll record myself live, like talking about certain things. But I only have so much time to be able to stand in front of a camera and get that done because I'm busy doing a lot of other things. So we'll use AI tools like HeyGen. So we have an AI avatar built of me, and then we will like feed it a script that we create based on some topics I would talk about, and then it'll make a video. So we use AI tools like that. Um, you know, we use a lot of automation tools for like marketing stuff. Let's see. I mean, some of it's just silly things like everyone's using stuff like this. Like we use Google Workspace, but we use tons of tools within Google Workspace. We found to be extremely useful. I'm sitting here looking at my toolbar of the 7,000 tabs I have open on here to see, if there's any like really good one I use. Ahrefs. Are you familiar with Ahrefs? Ahrefs.com. Ahrefs is a big one. If you are in a business that relies heavily on traffic and SEO and GEO, Ahrefs is kind of a must-have tool. It helps us make decisions, marketing decisions, and implementing stuff like that. I think it's kind of an unavoidable tool at this point. The only way to actually avoid, in my opinion, the only way to actually avoid this is if you use Claude Code to build your own Ahrefs alternative that works specifically for your business, which is something we're probably going to get done this summer. But the data that Ahrefs gives me is invaluable in, our day-to-day operations of the business. Like Stripe, of course. I mean, like Stripe, of course, is a payment processor, but the data we get from Stripe is also invaluable in some of our decision making. Things like MRR and our renewal rates, because our business is kind of it's a subscription model. So if you register an LLC with us, you renew it next year because we're still your registered agent. So we focus a lot of our decision making on improving renewal rates to improve our MRR. And without Stripe, we don't that's where we get that data from. And so, you see all these things, people say, oh, but Stripe charges so much. You could just have a regular merchant account and have a lower rate. For us, Stripe is much more than just merchant processing. It's a lot of data, and I really like Stripe.
You get what you pay for, right?
Yeah.
So, and a lot of times that is where the intrinsic value is, people, like anything, right? I always share with clients, I might be a quarter point higher in one of the lending, scenarios that I have, but you get me. And I certainly sell myself. I sell the strategy. I sell the background. I sell the marketing that I do. I sell the ability to connect you to my, circle. So if it's not worth a quarter point, then I don't need the business, right? So as an example, if I happen to be a quarter point higher. So I love that mindset behind it is you're using the tools that also not necessarily are the cheapest, which off camera, I might have to learn from you real quick here, HeyGen, because I have the same thing. I've not been able to master how to truly use it the best way, but I liked your idea right now. So awesome, brother. Well, hey, what's the best way for people, they're watching this video, they're like, man, I want to do business with Business Anywhere. I want to do business with that trust, man. I have a lot of assets. I need to protect myself better. What are some of the best ways to get a hold of you or your team?
So for the consulting and the asset protection stuff, that would be globalwealthprotection.com. So you can reach out to us there. Our contact details are on there, or you can just send a contact form or whatever. And then the other side, businessanywhere.io is the website. So specifically .io. It's funny. There is a businessanywhere.com. It forwards to another website of a company that's been out of business for a very long time. And I've been trying for the past couple of years to buy that domain, but they're like, I don't know. They moved to Mars.
And they must be on auto renewal with that registrar. Right?
I think they must be. Yeah, they must be on auto renew with the registrar, but the company, they don't even use, the businessanywhere.com forwards to a different company that's not even related to that. So they own the domain, but the domain it forwards to is out of business. I've called them on the phone and it's a dead number. I've emailed them. You get this email is not in use or whatever. I've tried to reach out to them. So I would love to have the .com, but they've had it for they've had that domain for 15 plus years, and they are what it is. You made a good point. Somebody probably has their personal credit card on GoDaddy, and they probably have 100 other domains, and they're doing something completely different now, and they don't even notice that domain gets renewed every year. They don't even know that website still exists, but they don't even know.
It's typically pretty cheap, right? 19 to $20 a year or something like that. So awesome, brother.
So that's the way. Well, that's how you get us.
It's been super intriguing. I think it's a different type of conversation we had today. not so technical of your operations, your scaling, your funding, and all that type of stuff. But very intriguing because I feel like it's the right time that if you haven't learned how to do what you're doing, and if you could find the right way to be in business for yourself, or even there's certain jobs right now, like joining your organization doesn't mean that you have to be bound to something, right? You're finding the right talent, and if your person wants to move from St. Louis, Missouri to Columbia, you're okay with it. You're an employer that wants to be able to give that freedom. So be open-minded. You know, if you're listening to this for the first time and you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel. So I'll do a quick plug. But you know, the things that Bobby just talked about are from a entrepreneur and also from an employer mindset that are different nowadays over the last probably 10, 15 years. And there's still going to be you know, the Jamie Dimons that say, hey, look, I'm not running a $3 trillion bank and you're going to be exploring yourself in Australia when I need you in Chicago, as an example. But to join organizations like Business Anywhere and the global, what's the global name again? Global Wealth
Globalwealthprotection.com.
Protection Company, and a leader like Bobby, you may have find a different home that suits you better. So,
Yeah.
also, by the way, go get the book, The 4A Formula, Untangle Any Challenge and Think Like a CEO. It's my own journey and business entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship, and then some valuable bonuses of great people like Bobby that we put into the book as well. And visit goforceo.com. And Bobby, thanks so much for being a part of this program, and love to stay in touch with you and kind of see where the next 16, 18, 24. You know, I was just talking to a dad of both our daughters are 6 years old in soccer, and he's in like a LexisNexis type business where it's information driven, and he's trying to figure out like what does life actually look like 5 years from now?
Mm-hmm.
Where like he's rethinking them, and he's a director, high position, multi-billion-dollar company, but he's not worried, but he's like, what is life literally going to look like? You know, what are we all going to be doing? And there's the fear mongering of AI. There's also the, you know, paradigm shift of AI and all the things. So it'll be interesting over the years. And you're one of those thought leaders out there. So we appreciate you coming on the Go Show channel.
By the way, I'm very optimistic about AI. I am the complete opposite. I do not buy into any of the fear mongering of AI. I think it's going to be amazing and it's going to create new opportunities we can't even dream exist right now.
Oh yeah, and I'm on that same page. So I love that the people I've had on GoPCO, now we're connected. If we, you know, reach out to each other, now it's so neat that at least you'll, you know, give me 5 minutes of your time because you've been on the podcast. You know, if you have one or whatever, you know,
Yep.
I have a lot of people I'm thinking of that need your service. So I'm certainly going to be referring them out to you and your and especially the global one, because I've got some
Great.
people out here that could really use that. And I don't think that they're thinking of it in that manner, right? So, investment real estate owners to just people that have built some great wealth, myself, you know, blah, 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 right? All that type of stuff. So,
Sure.
awesome, brother. Well, hey, thanks so much. And people to reach out to you, is it just, we said, right, go to your website, hit up your email. That's the
Yeah.
best way to reach your team.
Yeah. Globalofprotection.com. We have our contact details on the page. Businessanywhere.io. We have our contact details on the page. We have, you can send us a message. You can also schedule a call right on the page, whatever you need.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you've watched this whole video, it's a bit longer than I usually do, but you know what? It's very intriguing when you have these types of people on your podcast, because it's not the Mark Cubans of the world or the famous people or the ones that have big notoriety. It's guys like Bobby that are changing the world, doing entrepreneurial things. And he said it before, entrepreneurs change the world, right? We are the ones, right, that are creating things. And I
Yep.
am a little partial to be an entrepreneur too, because there's some great benefits to being an entrepreneur and making a very good six-figure income. Most businesses in America don't even ever reach seven figures. They don't even get to $1 million in revenue. So,
Yep.
you know, there is some yin yang to that. It's always a good discussion, but I love the spirit. I love what you brought to the podcast, and thank you for your time.
Great. Thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it.